Okay. Calling to order today the Bethlehem Redevelopment Authority for the City of Bethlehem meeting here March 26th at 5:38 p.m. We have a couple agenda items. I believe we have Allie online and we have Tracy on the phone. So we have a quorum. So the first item on the agenda is our annual meeting, election of officers, reappointing the solicitor, and reaffirming the meeting date and time. So who am I turning this to? Mr. Riskin, our solicitor, will take over this item.
Okay, thank you. I'll just read the slate of officers and then you can decide if you want to make nominations or accept the slate as it was last year. So Chairperson Tracy Moskovich, Vice Chairman and Treasurer Tracy Samuelson, Secretary Heather Bamboo Weiss, Assistant Secretary Allie McDaniel, Assistant Secretary and Assistant Treasurer Ronald Heckman, and Chris Spadoni was the Assistant Treasurer. But, you know, so that he's not here and you don't have a fifth member, so.
Okay.
So basically, do you want to recommend that slate and then vote on it, or do you want to do it individually if you're not inclined to go with that?
Allie and Tracy, do you want to take this slate all together and vote?
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Yep.
Do either of you have any changes or
No other
nominations?
nominations?
I do not.
Okay.
No.
So I guess there's been a motion to accept the slate as it was last year, as I just read it. And so take a vote. All those in favor?
I.
Aye.
Okay, you got 3. So congratulations, ladies and gentlemen who's not here. I'll turn the meeting back to Tracy.
Okay. So now we need to reappoint the solicitor. Sean, do you have any item on this one, or are we just reappointing Mr. Riskin?
We are reappointing. I would recommend that we reappoint
Great,
Mr. Riskin.
thank you. So I'll take a motion to reappoint Mr. Riskin as the solicitor.
I make a motion to reappoint Attorney Riskin.
Take a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Great. Thanks. Congratulations, Mr. Riskin. Another year. Reaffirming the meeting date and time. So is it just to propose the same 4th Thursday at 5 o'clock?
Unless there's an alternate recommendation.
Yeah, November,
Allie-
December.
Allie and Tracy, are you guys still okay with this time?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then, I'm sorry, Heather, you said November and December.
It's the third Thursday.
We're moving it to the week before the 3rd Thursday.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so
Sounds good.
I'll take a motion to accept the same schedule.
Motion
A
for
second.
that schedule.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on. Minutes from the meeting on December 18th, 2025. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
And a second.
Second.
Any questions, comments from either of you? Edits?
No,
Nope.
not me.
Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
I.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes. Okay. Cash reports. And I'm going to take these all together. We have November 30, 2025, December 31st, 2025, and January 31st, 2026. I'll take a motion to accept the cash reports as presented.
Motion.
Motion to.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and I'll flip it. Allie, you get the first this time. Tracy, you'll take the second. And then, do we have any comments or questions from either of you?
No.
No.
Okay, great. And all those in favor?
Aye.
I.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Okay. Courtesy of the floor. Anybody have anything they would like to say for the good of the order? Okay.
Sorry.
That's all.
Thank you, Tracy.
We got you now. That's the important part.
So sorry.
Okay. And
That's
then
it.
we have a guest here tonight. We have Chris Bentley from Bucknell-Lasicki. He's going to be presenting our audit for 24-25. And so at this point, I think I'll turn it over to Chris for presentation of the financial report.
Hello. Oh, this is on. Tracy, you saved the day.
What?
You saved the day. So thank you for hopping. Thank you for hopping on speakerphone.
I am so sorry.
That's all right. All right.
Okay.
Again, my name is Chris Bentley from Bucknell-Lasicki. We completed the 2025 audit. We completed this back in, what's the date here? Back in January. There should be 3 reports. I'll kind of go through all 3 of them. The longer audit report, if you turn to page 1, this is our independent auditor's report. This is our opinion. You could just see on the second paragraph here, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects, right? So that's the most important paragraph in this report. That's basically an unmodified opinion on your financial statements. It's a clean opinion on your financial statements. That means the information that we received was accurate. And this is the same opinion that you guys have gotten in the past, right? There are no other changes to this report, so I'm not going to go through them in detail. Right? Just a couple of quick highlights of your financial statements. If you turn to page 7 of your audit report, this is basically your balance sheet of your general fund. Right? You have total assets at June 30th, 2025 of $802,000. Last year, June 30th, 2024, you had assets of $508,000. Right? The increase is basically the $375,000 grant that we got from the Pennsylvania Housing and Rehab. All right. If you look down to your liabilities, you have liabilities of $668,000. Right. Last year, June 30, 2024, you had $250,000 in liabilities. Again, same thing. It was the $375,000 that we got in cash that we have not spent yet. So it increases your assets and then also increases your liabilities. And you can see you have total fund balance June 30, 2025 of $134,000. If you turn to page 9, this is basically your income statement of your general fund. You can see we had total revenues of $132,000. We had total expenditures of $258,000, and we had a net change in fund balance of negative $126,000. Right? So we had a beginning fund balance of $260,000. And again, we have an ending fund balance June 30th, 2025 of about $135,000. Right? Now, when you kind of slap together, if you turn to page 5, if you kind of add your long-term assets and any kind of long-term liabilities, in your case, it's your fixed assets. If you add your fixed assets and some of your pension liabilities, you can see at the bottom there, you have a net position of $24.4 million. Right? Now, of that net position of $24.4 million, a bulk of that, almost all of it, is your investment in your assets, your capital assets. Right? And then you have an unrestricted portion of about $90,000. All right. So that's the audit report. The second report I have in here, it's 2 pages. This is our report on any kind of, this is our management comment letter. If we had any kind of management findings in doing the audit, if we're doing the audit and we come across any kind of what's called significant deficiencies in internal control or material weaknesses, they will be reported in this report. And you can see at the bottom there, we have improving financial reporting as a deficiency in internal control. Right now, this is the same finding that we have had in the audit report for the past last year and several years before that. Right, there's been much improvement.
It's the very last page.
Okay.
Very last page. There's been a lot of improvement in the financial reporting, but we had a lot of still adjusting journal entries that we had to do during the audit, but it's improving. Right. The last report that is on here, this is our called a governance letter. It's communication that we need to have at the conclusion of the audit with the board. And in this letter, we would put it, if we had any kind of difficulties during the audit, if we had any disagreements with management, if we had any kind of adjustments that management disagreed with, or any of those issues during the audit. And you could see in this letter, I'm happy to say that we had none of those issues in the audit. Everything we asked for, we received timely and accurately. So no issues as far as getting the information and dealing with management during the audit. All right. So that's all I have. Is there any questions related to the audit or the two letters?
I don't have any.
Allie, I'll give you an opportunity to ask questions. I don't know if you have any.
No, no questions.
Okay. I don't have any for you either, Chris.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I believe we'll move to a vote to accept the audit. So I'll need a motion to accept the audit.
I make a motion to accept the audit.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Any abstentions? Audit is accepted. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. If you guys do have any other questions on the audit, or anybody else, just email me or call me.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Chris.
Yep, take care.
Appreciate
You
it.
guys. Yep, take care.
Thank you.
So the next thing we have, and Allie, did you move to your vehicle?
Not yet.
Okay. I believe Sean's going to share a presentation.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
I didn't know if Tracy needed to see
No,
things.
you don't need to
Oh,
see it.
okay, great. Okay. Okay.
So it's just for
Sure.
benefit of those here.
Thank you.
Sure. So, as I did last year, wanted to provide kind of a 2025 recap for the board about kind of the work we did here in the meetings and also just behind the scenes and do a status check and some opportunities for 2026. Kind of in tandem with the audit report, I think it's important as we think about this next year, which I think might be a bit busier than we have had maybe last year and to a degree this year. I think this year was between my 2 years with the authority. It's been a fairly light this year, but I anticipate some pickup in 2026. And I will say as a kind of a initial comment to this, I believe we've had interest in the vacancy. Obviously, we have a current vacancy on the RDA board. I believe we've had interest, and that interest has been relayed to the mayor's office. So, in Chris's departure off of the authority, hopefully we'll be able to fill that vacancy. So this isn't too long, and I'll breeze through it pretty quick. And again, you don't need to see kind of what I'm sharing. I'll speak to it here. But just thinking of 2025, I mean, the what's in the yellow boxes, which are, use permit agreements, cooperation agreements, and amendments, project planning, particularly around our two major properties that we've had this year, 723 Broadway and 401, 403, and 405 East 4th Street. We've talked about that, fairly ad nauseum in our meetings. And then obviously kind of a big sale this year was our sale of the parking areas at the Hotel Bethlehem. Those are things that we dealt with here and discussed here. And then, I've kind of sprinkled it throughout the year in 2025, but just some of the things we were doing behind the scenes to really, I think, get the RDA on stable footing or start to get unstable footing. And then again, look toward the future. So, Heather, myself, our solicitor, worked on kind of several different and talked about several different kind of mid and long-term priorities and planning. So continuing to have discussions with the city about, their support and their role in kind of righting the ship following the ending of the TIF in 2020 for the RDA, and obviously with the cooperation agreement with the city, how do we properly move forward as an authority and get back to what an RDA does in terms of rehabbing properties. And then I'll touch on it a little bit later, but housing related activities and proposals. I think there's some interesting housing opportunities coming out of the community development department, where I think the RDA will have a potentially a pretty sizable role in those housing initiatives. And then we're constantly working with our strategic partners. That's, everybody from Arts Quest to, and I'll touch on a little bit later, but just future planning for the steel site. So we're continually talking with our partners to understand the fact that we have these great assets and what does the future look like for them. And then fiscal sponsorships. Heather and I have continued to have conversations, particularly around 401, 403, and 405, just involvement from private banks, and maybe they'd want to get involved down the road. So we're just continuing we continue those conversations in 2025. As I did last year, I wanted to provide a kind of project update, properties update. Our two major properties, 723 Broadway, as you know from bringing it to the board here. Currently, 723 Broadway is owned by CALV, Community Action Lehigh Valley. We sold it to them to then sell it to a low to moderate income buyer and keep those affordability provisions baked in. Once that property sells, the grant funds that we put into that project will come back to us, and hopefully that'll move forward fairly quickly. I know Heather's on weekly calls, I believe, or weekly calls about this property and moving forward. And then one that I know we've talked about well before my time is that 401, 403, and 405. Shows kind of our grant funds received thus far, and kind of shows where we're at, which is approximately a $1 million gap that remains. Heather and I are continually looking for grant opportunities. However, I think given where we are, we've been thinking about putting out an RFP, request for proposals, not just to preferred developers that we already know of, but developers who'd be willing to engage to come in and work with us in collaboration, put some skin in the game to move this project forward. And part of that too is, maybe ultimately taking a management role once the rehab of this property is done, with it in mind that these grant funds require affordability provisions. I believe it's 20 years or thereabouts, so that any partner we bring on board isn't going to turn it over to a market rate, rent it at market rate. And obviously we have our commercial spaces on the first floor, so we're still thinking about how we best utilize that. Our earliest grant, which is the Keystone Communities Fund, we actually just filed and were approved for an extension for that. And I think just provided some kind of crystallized and provide some clarity that, that's funding we received in, I think in 2021 or 2022, thereabouts. And so I think it's further onus on us to continue to push this project forward, because we don't want to get in a situation where we're losing grant funding attached to this project, just because we're waiting for more grant funding. So being methodical about the project. One thing I wanted to talk about, which didn't come in front of the board at the time, but I think I've talked about it previously. We had FAIR funding, so that's PA Housing Affordability and Rehabilitation Enhancement Funds that were received in 2021. The RDA received it. We allocated a portion of that to a property in the city. Ultimately, we determined in 2025 that there was some turnover with ownership of that property, and it was no longer feasible for us. So instead of just leaving that funding, kind of in a pot off to the side, we really had an opportunity to kind of be the closing partner, so to speak, in terms of finishing the stack that was needed for what is known as the Western Gateway project. That's at 230 West 3rd and 232 West 3rd Street in South Bethlehem. They are Church of the Nativity properties that the church is converting to 3-unit multifamily structure at 30 West 3rd, and then a 3-unit multifamily structure at 230 West 3rd. It'll provide 6 affordable apartment units at a 15-year affordability provision, attached to that. And so, we really had an opportunity to allocate the fair funds, which was 176,000, almost 177,000, to that project, and essentially close the gap that they needed there. So we will be in partnership with the city and New Bethany and CLV to rehab those properties and turn them back into circulation. I think it was just a great opportunity, and we were very happy to do it. In 2025, we revived our Blighted Property Review Committee internal meetings. So that's just staff internal to the city, Mike Simonson, our code officer, Heather, myself, a few other folks, Sarah Zatullo, our community development deputy director, to think about blighted properties in the city, and going through the process. If one is at the point where it needs to go through the blight process, referring those to the actual BPRC, which had not met at that point, the 16 year and a half that had been with the city. So we actually did hold a meeting in December of the Blighted Property Review Committee here in Town Hall, where they blighted one property. And I will say, since that blight designation had been put on that property, the property management company has actually come out and remediated all the issues. So the act of having it blighted through BPRC encouraged its resolution and the issues being resolved. And then during that meeting, we also decertified 6 properties. So these were 6 properties that were blighted, that either through the ownership, somebody buying the property and then rehabbing it, Mike Simonson and the committee felt that they could come off of the blight list. And so it's just good to know, through really no action of our own, people are taking ownership of these properties, getting them off the blight list, and back into circulation. And so we're continuing to, have these internal meetings, I think monthly, to talk about that list. And then lastly, just 2026 opportunities. As I said, with the city, they're pursuing kind of a mixed income housing kind of development opportunity. The city is consulting with a firm called the Center for Public Enterprise, or CPE, to really look at financing, development partnerships, and long-term ownerships in the city, where the public piece can have a much larger role, or a role in which it could move a project forward that would otherwise struggle to find financing. And in that, we're having discussions. We, the RDA, are having discussions with city staff and with the Center for Public Enterprise to understand, is there a role similar to when the RDA was involved in the TIF? Is there a role for the RDA, given its unique capacity as it pertains to these properties? So it's still pretty early on, but I think the city's doing some good work. Heather and I have been tasked with kind of answering questions that CPE has proposed to us as to our capacity and our bandwidth to kind of assist in this process. So I think there will be more to come in 2026 for you good? So I think we still have Tracy.
I think I lost Tracy.
We lost Tracy.
I'll get her back.
Okay.
Yeah, I lost you. No, that's okay. You're good.
Okay. So beyond that partnership with the city, what I can say here is that there is, with the steel site, and obviously many of us are familiar with the former TIF and the RDA's role there. I think there's some real engine and real movement on kind of the property owner's behalf down there about what the future of that site looks like. And I think, without going into too great of detail, I think there's opportunity again for the RDA in that capacity. But again, very early days, and I think more to come in 2026, particularly maybe the latter half of 2026. I'm constantly thinking, and Heather and I are constantly thinking about strategic planning. I'm continuing to pursue opportunities for grant support. So there was a program at the end of 2025 that we applied for I think it was the Center for Economic. It was an economic-based nonprofit that would essentially come in and assist organizations that wanted to do strategic planning. Ultimately, it was highly subscribed, and they couldn't, fund our project. But we're looking for similar opportunities all the time to work with partners that could help us think about where we are as an authority now, where we're headed in the next 5 years, 10 years, and how this authority can continue to have a real important role in the city. Policy updates, really around that, as you know, at the start of 2026, we kind of had a rush, Heather and I, to get snow removal for 401, 405 East 4th Street, which kind of led to a conversation around our procurement policy, which through digging with our solicitor, realized our procurement policy was last approved and viewed by the board in 1997, I believe it was. So just thinking about, redevelopment authorities' role in the permissible procurement levels and the permissible threshold limits for these types of things. Fortunately, in that case, it was ultimately a cost to us that was well below needing board approval or having to go through a significant bid process. But I don't want to get in a situation where, we find ourselves, we have to make a huge purchase and we didn't follow proper procedure. So those sorts of things I think we can work through in 2026. And then partnerships, I think Arts Quest, you'll actually probably hear from Cassie Hilgert, the CEO of Arts Quest, at our next board meeting. They have some ideas and plans and some potential grant funding around improvement of the plaza outside the visitor center. And so she'll come here and have a discussion with us. And then tied to that, I do want to kind of raise the something that came up in the last few weeks, which there was a sewage issue at the visitor center down at, that Arts Quest leases from us, which, we've had issues like this come up before with properties we own that Arts Quest leases or other partners lease, and they go through a kind of an insurance policy. But I think it's just good to have a kind of status check with Cassie about kind of their role and our partnership with them as it pertains to these assets, and how they see, utilizing them moving forward. Obviously, behind the visitor center, they're currently redoing the turn and grind, which is going to be a great event space. And so I think you'll see more activity, and hopefully through the refurbishment of the plazas, even though they look great now, I think, you'll see a more active space. And so I think it's just a conversation around that role. And then Heather and I had conversations in 25 with Chris, who's the ED of the Lehigh County RDA. And although the city is only a small portion of it in Lehigh County, excuse me, I think they're really doing some creative things over there. And so we've had some initial conversations with him. I went to LVPC at a meeting where he presented. He just got approval through the county commissioners to create a countywide demolition and rehabilitation fund, and that's rolling out in 2026. And so although the focus not so much of our RDA has been in West Bethlehem, I just think that's an opportunity to really tighten the partnership between that RDA and ourselves. And then lastly, even though it's two different municipalities, our former executive director, Tony Hanna, has been appointed to the Allentown RDA. So I don't necessarily think there's an opportunity to, we don't share a project, but I just think continuing to learn from one another is important, and it's good that we have a very close connection there. So the focus has remained on sustainability and just ensuring that we continue to do mission-aligned project development so that we can get back to, acquiring properties, putting them back into circulation, and not staying attached to an asset or a property for too long. So I wanted to keep it brief, and I know we started late, so I wanted to keep it even briefer. So we're happy to take any questions, but that's the crux of 2025 and where I think ultimately there's some opportunity in 26.
Thank you, Sean. That was really thorough. I really appreciate that and helpful. Allie or Tracy, do you have any questions?
The only question I had, did you say that 401 to 405 East 4th, right?
Yes.
Is lacking funds in the nature of $3 million? Did I hear that right?
No, 1 million.
No, okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Even with that, there was a grant, right?
Correct. So
300 and some thousand?
Yep. So we the most recent grant we got for that was in the order of 800,000, which was one of like 7, I think, through the Commonwealth. I think because it has the commercial and residential component, the rehab is significant. And then also we're making 4 units affordable, and we're also including accessible. I think what was it? Discussions around an elevator or greater access, which obviously is going to increase
Okay.
the price there. I think this is, even though the gap is still fairly large, and that doesn't negate us, I think still going for grant funding. I think it's still a pretty, we've accrued, what is it now, Heather? Like essentially $1 million, right? Almost $1 million in grant funding, which I think if you put that out to a developer through an RFP and say, look, we've kind of set up the dominoes of $1 million already.
Right.
And we would like you to come on board, put some skin in the game. And then you're, really the only kind of stipulation is that you have to keep those units affordable, which we would hope we'd have a good partner that'd be willing to do that. I think it's actually pretty good where it is to potentially go out for RFP. But, we're continuing to talk. Who do we talk with? Fred from Federal Home Loan Bank about some additional opportunities through them, and they know what this project is. And so I think it's also just, getting the word out there to these like institutions that maybe down the line in 3-4 months, they go, oh yeah, we did talk to the RDA in Bethlehem about that project. So I think also just keeping the lines of communication open are important. But, I don't want to, Heather and I both agree. I think this has been a long-standing project and we've been building the stack. I just don't want to get to a point where we're now losing grants that we got several years ago, because then we're just playing catch up with ourselves. So.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like a real possibility, since you have so much money as an incentive to,
Yep.
Like a nonprofit developer or whatever types of developers you're dealing with, because of, the need to keep it affordable, which is key. Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I when you see how much you already can dangle in front of them that you have collected,
Yep.
that you have amassed.
Right.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. That's great.
Any other questions from Allie or Tracy, if you have anything else?
Nope, none for me.
I just have one really quick one, Sean. On the 723 Broadway.
Yeah.
We sold that, I want to say probably just under a year ago. Like everything went through.
It actually transferred in December,
Okay. This past December.
December 25. Yeah.
Oh, I feel like longer than that in my head.
I think it did.
Forever.
Yeah, I think.
That's why.
Mm.
Well, so my question was the process for CALV to sell it? Like, how long does that process take? 'Cause
That's what they're working through right now.
okay.
They're working through it because they got home funding, so they have to make sure what they're doing complies with what the home funding is. So there's
Okay.
limits on how much they can make the purchase price, and it needs to be affordable. But yet, of course, they want to maximize their profit on it. So it has to be balanced out, and they're going through different things. They're working closely with Robert Bedoni and Emily Falenta on that process and on those things, and they're gearing up to be able to put it on the market. There are a couple issues at the property that they needed to take care of, which were discovered because of the extreme weather we were having. So those have all been addressed also.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. I want to make sure I didn't have unrealistic expectations. I kind of felt like they probably would have had somebody ready to go.
I think I think in all reality, like Heather and I were like, great, this transacted, like this is ready to go. And then from our perspective, we've done everything we can to, I think, put it in a good position. It's now really a conversation between city and community action to move it forward.
And they're also, the reality is most of the time the spring is when they want to start putting properties on the market.
Sure,
so
sure.
they know, and they're pretty sure it's going to have good interest. So they're not concerned about having to hold on to it much longer than absolutely necessary.
Yep.
And then Sean, let me look here. Did I have any others? I think that it's a really good idea to do the partner RFP for the partner developer, sorry.
Yep.
For 405. I think that's great. And then where was I going? Lehigh County RDA. I just want to draw your attention to the LVPC housing strategy that's going to be released imminently.
Yep.
Because there are some things in there, some strategies and that talk about partnerships related to things. And we've had conversations in our office because there have been conversations about other RDA opportunities.
Sure.
In the Lehigh Valley. And so I just keep your eye on that and I'll reach out.
Yeah, please.
When that
That would be
happens.
great.
because I think it'll be relevant to the way you ended this presentation. So
Yep.
if do you have any other things that you would need to share with the board? You have other matters on the agenda?
I think the other matters is really just to talk about, the kind of instance of, I had Heather put that on there because I was going to talk about the sewage backup, the visitor center,
Okay.
which, just it's something the board has to take action on. It's something really Heather and I have to do, but it's just, I think it's, since we own it, it goes through a pretty prescribed process to our insurance. ArtsQuest, graciously, has really kind of took the lead on connecting with the right partners, getting it mitigated quickly. But I just wanted to raise it to the board so they knew. But aside from that, no other matters.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is for board action, amendment to CDBG agreement. We've been asked to review and consider approval of amendment number 3 to CDBG agreement between RDA City of Bethlehem Tracy, slow down. For the RDA allocation of the 2022 CDBG funds. This amendment extends the timeline for the use of the funds to the end of the year, December 31st, 2026, as well as update the HUD matrix code associated with the funds. The updated matrix code will allow eligible costs incurred as part of the blight remediation program to be reimbursed regardless of the acquisition of the property by the RDA. Approval of this amendment can be done via motion. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the amendment.
And if I can just quickly add one comment to that. So to put that in the layman's terms, we had Heather and I had a conversation with Robert Vidoni, who's the CDBG, kind of point person with the city. And this had been CDBG funding that, in all reality was kind of in the RDA's bucket. And I think it had just, for one reason or another, I think there were some things that had to be adjusted to align with eligible costs. And so, Heather and I made a concerted effort to sit down with Robert and say, how can we move this forward so that we can tap into this funding? So there's no, plan right now. We're going to say we're going to use the funding that we can, more readily access. We're going to use it, allocate it to X, Y, and Z thing. But I think having conversations with Robert then allowed us to, move this forward. And he said, to do that, we would need to put an amendment forward. So that's why it's in front of you. Just allows us to access more funding that was really already allocated to us.
Thank you for that context, John. Appreciate it. So I'll take a motion to approve the amendment.
Make a motion.
Need a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
I'm sorry. Allie or Tracy, do you have any questions for John or Heather?
No.
No.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. We did that. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry if I'm rushing, Tracy. Both Allie and I have to get somewhere. So I'm trying to wrap up here. So
Yeah, I'm just putting a knife in my chest.
no. I just wanted you to understand why I'm talking really fast.
Oh no, this
Okay.
is good. I am so sorry again.
It's okay. General discussion. Does anybody else have anything?
Anybody in the audience?
No, I think he's napping.
Nope.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Motion.
Allie, okay, great. Thank you. All
Second.
right. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone. We'll
Thanks,
see you.
guys.
Next month we
Thanks
have
so much,
the
guys. See ya.
meeting, So
Thank you.
make sure you mark your calendars for next month. Thank you. Okay, bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Trace.
Yeah, talk to you later.
All righty. Bye.
We gotta go. Let's go. Do you